everybody, and welcome back to another episode of From BA to Broadway. You know who it is. It's me. It's Brennan, and I'm bringing you your general programming reminders. Folks, every Monday we are here with the main episode. Every Friday we are here with our mini-series In the Spotlight. But that's enough about us. Nobody cares about that right now. That's not why we're here, folks. Today we are joined by the one and only Nik Walker. Nik, what is going on?
Oh, nothing. No, I'm excited to be here. Happy to be here.
Happy to have you. Nik, who the heck are you and what do you do?
Oh God, what a deep question.
The heavy-hitting questions.
Heavy question. Yeah, okay, who am I? I'm an actor and a writer and a Boston native. I am
oh my God, you're from Boston?
I'm from Boston.
Okay, I'm from South Central Mass.
Oh, dude, yeah, I'm from JP.
Heard.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Come on, we'll talk about it later. Yeah, come on back, babe.
Hell yeah.
Anyway, yeah, man. So I, all these things. I'm a professor at NYU. I am an ADHD person.
Hell yeah.
I'm a mental health advocate. But yeah, I mean, mostly if you know anything about me and you're not like a friend or a family member, I would assume you would know me from my acting work or from my time on the stage or my time on the screen. That's probably, but also like I'm a huge nerd. I love theme parks. I love wrestling. I love Batman. You probably can't see it in this shot, but for those of you who, is there a visual aspect to this?
No, this is going to be audio only.
So
this is just for my eyes only.
Just for your eyes only. But if there was a camera, y'all, you would see a massive bust of Batman in the back behind me.
Oh my God.
Huge comic book nerd. But yeah,
nice.
So I do the arts things and the nerd things.
Rock and roll. Nik, second question is usually, how do we know each other?
Oh,
which is very interesting.
It's because it's a long well, it's not even a long story, I would say.
I'm curious to hear what your side of this is.
Okay. So where shall we begin? My side of this, I would say, goes back to a little thing called nerddom. Okay?
Of course. Yes.
And one of the nerddoms that I am interested in is the nerddom that comes to Harry Potter. Perhaps you've heard of this IP, this franchise. The other half of my life is, as I've said, acting.
Mm-hmm.
I did a show for about 5-6 years of my life called Hamilton. And during that time, a young man named Jordan Fisher came into my life. We became friends. I love him very dearly. He was my Lawrence Phillip. He's a good guy. He just closed out his run on Hadestown. He's now doing Urinetown. Great person. And Jordan, whenever he's based in LA mostly, but now that might be changing a little bit. But whenever he's in town, we always get lunch, or we catch up, we get dinner, whatever. And he had texted me. I want to say this it was the most random thing, because I feel like it was either back in Hamilton or doing Ain't You Proud at the time. He had long since left, but he was back in town, and he was like, "Hey man, do you want to come to the Harry Potter store?" And I was like, "Well, I mean, like, what is that question?" Like, and this was back when the Harry Potter store was first opening.
We weren't even open yet. This was pre-opening.
You guys weren't even open.
No, it was like a soft launch, soft opening.
So Jordan, in his wonderful access to these things, was very kind to bring me along. And we got to meet, and you were our, well, I don't even know, because you were our guide, you were our host.
I had no official title because about an hour before y'all got there, once again, we hadn't opened yet. We had no clue what it was going to be or like how to operate. And about an hour before y'all arrived, one of my supervisors pulls me over. I've known these people for 3 days,
Yes.
And she's like, "Hey, you seem level-headed. There's 2 Broadway guys coming. Can you show them around the store?" And I was like, yeah. I was like, what am I supposed to do? And they were like, "Oh, I don't know. Like, just tell them about stuff and like hold bags and like, I don't know, whatever they kind of need." And I was like, "Okay, I'll do that, I guess." And yeah, I was just like a tour guide, a personal shopper,
you were
etc.
I remember you being extremely kind, extremely knowledgeable. You were also dealing with 2 people who like truly wear their nerd hearts on their sleeves.
Of course.
So like, we wanted to see everything about this, and and that butter beer. Bruh, that butter, I teach at NYU, and that's right by the Flatiron District where this store is. And so every time I walk by on my way to class, I'm just like, oh my God, I would love for some butterbeer right now, but I can't. You know,
Of course, of course.
it's a once in every epic treat, but
It's a liquid cavity.
it really is. And there's no other way to describe it.
No,
But yeah,
truly.
we had a blast. I think I got sent home with I think there's a mug that I got sent home with. I think there might have been a board game. Like there's a bunch of little knickknacks.
Love.
So that was, and thank you for being so kind and showing us around.
Of course, of course. Yeah, and that was the inception of it all. That was our beginning.
Oh, I love it.
And then third question is, Nick, did you go to school for theater?
I did. You know, it's so funny. I did go to school for theater. What I think is hysterical is I didn't go to school for musical theater.
Okay.
I never studied musical theater and never really had any desire to. I was really focused on Shakespeare. That was my big focus at NYU, classical theater. So if you know anything about the way that NYU works as an undergrad, I'm sure other people have spoken about this before, but it's a studio system. So you go there and there are studios that are within the school and studios that exist externally that have always existed, you know, outside of the school. And NYU has all these a kind of a combo platter of these studios as options, different disciplines of acting that you can, or different methods of acting that you can study. So I started my primary studio at NYU was Stella Adler Studio, and then I did a year of classical, and then I took an academic semester, and then I finished out with Stone Street Film and Television Studio.
Oh, wow.
So it's so funny that I've made, you know, most of my bones as a Broadway musical actor because I this was truly, it wasn't even that it wasn't in the cards. Like I had done musicals and I did them in college, but I never wanted to kind of, for me, it would have been limiting to be like, yep, I studied musical theater. Like I wanted to be able to say I act.
Yeah.
And I can sing, you know, and if that leads me into a life of musicals, great. But I was just like, I'm an actor and an artist first, and let's see what happens. So it was, interesting journey.
Yeah. Nice. Did you have like an artistic upbringing over in Boston?
Oh yeah, baby. You know what's interesting? I will say my mom very early on put me in the arts, and I just loved storytelling. I was obsessed with Spielberg movies growing up. Hook and Jurassic Park are still my favorite movies to this day. And she very early on, part of it was my ADHD. I think she was looking for something to focus me, and somebody had said theater will focus him. So she threw me in at Wheelock Family Theater. It's his community theater. Yeah, out of Wheelock College. Yeah. And it was really, I think that was kind of the beginning of it. I was struck by the community of theater. I was struck by the fact that all these people were coming together, and especially in a community theater where people are just doing it for free. People are doing it because they love it, right?
Of course.
Everyone was coming together to build something cool. And then as I got into film, I started to see what you could do with storytelling. I started to see like, oh, this is actually, it is playtime, but it's also a craft, and you can really make things happen. And, you know, craft or cultivate a journey similar to how you did when we came to the Harry Potter store, right? You can truly, you can cultivate an experience for someone, and that was fascinating to me. So it just kind of grew from there.
Heard. When did you kind of decide to pursue it professionally? Was it always kind of like assumed?
Yeah, you know, I just kept doing it, and it's so funny because now I talk, you know, I'm 37 now, and I talk to my cousins who are a bit older than me, and they remind me that like everyone in the family, it was, I think from their perspective, it was largely this kind of thing that like Nick did that was real cute, but that none of them took seriously.
Yeah,
and
of course.
that I seemed crazy to pursue. Like I for me it was in such a hyper focus to be like, I'm going to tell stories.
Yeah,
that's what I'm doing with my life. That it never. I don't remember even their teasing about it or anything that seemed like, oh well, he's going to do that. Side eye. I actually don't even register it because it was so for me like, no, this is what I do
for sure.
Yeah, so I think it was a very young age, for better or worse.
Heard.
You know, yeah.
I mean, ain't that the truth? Damn.
Here we are.
So you moved to New York for college?
Correct. I moved to New York for NYU. Yeah.
Rock and roll. And then after graduating, did you enter like the regional market? Like what was your grind? What were you up to? So, were you auditioning in college?
Yeah, it was interesting. You know, I did start auditioning in college, and I'm glad that I did, but I also wish I hadn't.
Heard.
I booked, oh my God, I'm going to forget the name of this play. There was a play that actually, it was an off-Broadway play that was going to do a tour. the original cast, the off-Broadway cast, had my buddy Oak in it, who would later go on to originate Mulligan Madison, and I booked the tour of it. A young Lee directed. I'm gonna at some random point in this podcast interview, I'm gonna remember the name of this show, this play. But I auditioned for it and booked it, and I couldn't do it, and that was the only thing that I auditioned for in school, because I remember somebody had told me, the thing about school, if you choose to go, is that if you're going, you're paying, especially to one of these schools like an NYU or a Carnegie Mellon or a Yale, whatever, paying exorbitant fees.
Of course.
Right. And you're giving yourself X amount of time to really be a student.
Yeah.
Right. And you'll always be a student in life. You'll always be learning new things. But this is concentrated time. When I go down to this campus now, I have this kind of overwhelming feeling of like, oh my God, like, it's so protected.
Yeah.
It's such and that's the point. Like,
totally.
even in New York City, where there's, NYU is famous because we don't have a campus necessarily, right? Like, it's just New York.
Yeah.
But even then, you are still, like, I know where the boundaries of NYU proper are, and to devote that time to just being present in that space, I think was very smart.
Heard.
And so I'm glad that I ended up doing that.
Yeah.
When I graduated, it was an ego check for me. I came out of the gate having been a very big fish in a very small pond. Like, I think I'd worked very hard. I was that kid who in school, I wasn't going to parties. I was up at the library reading plays, right? Like that, like,
nice.
and I was going to, Susan Laurie Parks, the amazing playwright, my favorite playwright, used to do this thing. She might still do it at the Public, where she would come into the lobby of the Public Theater and just sit at her typewriter and type, and you could just ask her questions. Right. It was this incredible thing. And I would do that like that. Like, other kids would be going to hang at somebody's house. And I'm like, no, I'm going to the Public to watch Susan Laurie Parks. Right. Like,
oh my God.
It was right. Like, I was like, if I'm going to be here, I'm going to be here. I'm going to devote my essence to this. So I think very quickly learned how capitalism is not a meritocracy.
Of course.
And commerce and art are not a meritocracy. And I had friends who were booking TV shows and booking big off-Broadway shows and big Broadway shows and, movies. And my first job out of school was TheaterWorks USA, which I'm not poo-pooing. It's an amazing organization, especially back then when you could get your equity card from them. But I was doing children's theater in the back of a 9-foot by 13-foot van.
Nice.
And traveling to towns like Oshkosh, Wisconsin, which is actually a great town, I will say. But it was humbling. And even then I had done some regional theater. Somewhere between my junior and senior year, I did a play up at the Hangar Theater in Ithaca. That was really my start. Peter Flynn, who ran the theater at the time, was a professor at Stella Adler's studio,
nice.
and so I knew him from there. Stephanie Yankwit was casting director, and she also worked at Adler, so I knew her from there. And then the summer after senior year, I went back to the Hangar, but these were both as non-union members, right? So my true being able to pay my bills off of this thing, that the first job of that was certainly TheaterWorks USA.
Gotcha.
But even then, I think about that first Hangar show that I did, and that cast was actually absurd. And there's been a couple times, I've had twice in my life have I been a part of a cast where, when I was on, early 20s or even late teens, where now I look at the names in that cast and I'm like, oh my God. So the Hangar cast was me, it was Danielle Brooks, it was Asia Kate Dillon, who, if you know them, they were on Billions for many seasons. They're incredible actor. It was Javon McFerrin, who'd go on to be a Hamilton. He's one of my best friends. Jonathan Burke, crazy talents.
That's wild.
Who were up in that Hangar. Yeah, it was nuts. It was a nuts cast. And I only had that once before in my life. And actually, the one time before in my life was at NYU.
Oh, okay.
Because the only musical I ever did, or the first musical I did, because I did 2 musicals at NYU in my 4 years there. And the first one I ever did was Michael R. Jackson's thesis project. It's called Only Children, and it was me, Brandon Uranowitz, Shayna Taub, Molly Hager, Sam Pinkleton, Ali Stroker.
That's crazy.
Leanna Hunt. Like, it was crazy. It's like we all joke in the text thread, like, yo, that was wild. It's just and you never know. Like, you never know how those things are gonna But I think that I was honored both times to kind of, now looking back to be like, oh yeah, like I was around the right people. I was around the people who were going to endure this madness as long as I am.
Yeah.
So that feels nice in retrospect. Yeah.
Heard. I love that. Was there something that kind of made you feel like you had to go to college? Like, did you feel like you really needed to work on performance or learn the craft in that way? Or was it more dramaturgical in that sense? Or
I wish I had been so much more adroit at if that's the right word, I think it is, at really researching why I wanted to go to college.
Amazing.
I knew that NYU was in New York. I knew they did Shakespeare, and that was about it.
Sometimes that's all it takes,
That's all it takes. And I remember going to that audition, and I remember my resume was written on a piece of blue line paper, and my headshot was a Polaroid, and there was all these kids with their stage moms there. And I was like, it took me a long time with auditions to not be this way. I have such a problem with authority. So I was kind of punk rock about it on purpose. Like I truly was like, F that. I don't care about this. But NYU looks for that. Like that's what they want. They want that kind of that kid who, is kind of bucking against things. They want that kind of individual mind. So I think it was a nice fit, but I'm very fortunate. I didn't look anywhere else. For a kid who was like, so like, oh yeah, I'm going to go to college and study this. My mom took me to tour Wesleyan once.
Oh, okay.
Once. And that was it. Like that was it. There was no other, I didn't have, I applied early decision to NYU too. Yeah. So I'm very fortunate that this worked out, because this could have been a trip for biscuits.
No kidding. Jeez. Yeah. Looking back, was there something that you were like, oh no, like I needed to go here because I needed to learn this specific thing, like?
There are two professors who changed my life. One of whom is now many, many times my boss, Kent Gash, who he actually runs the musical theater studio and the new studio on Broadway, which is an incredible studio. He at the time wasn't running he wasn't. He was there as a guest director, and he directed me in my second musical, which was The Who's Tommy, and he was my first black male professor, like of all time ever, and especially in theater. And he just had such an eye, and he still does, for theater. He is just so he's one of those, I call him Des McAnuff, who's another director, has this thing where if there's a barbecue scene on stage, he wants to see the fire coming off the grill, and he wants to see the sweat coming off the glass. And that's Kent Gash as a director. He is so specific, and it was so beautiful to be a part of his creation. But the other professor who changed my life was a man named Louis Sheeter, who ran the classical studio. He passed maybe 2 years ago. And Louis, and I've said this several times on other podcasts and other interviews, it's Louis' voice that I hear when I'm acting. It is his voice. His biggest thing was about this idea of letting go of what you think the scene has to be.
Gotcha.
Just allowing for the scene to tell you what it is, right? And allowing for the exploration. He would only ask you two questions really ever. So what do you want, and how are you going to get it? That's it. Like that was all he really cared about when it came to acting. Just this idea of a simplified, like knowing the text well enough to be able to use your words as weapons, right? You are a lawyer and an advocate for your character, so use these words, and that's it. And don't try to play the scene. Just get your character what they want, and what's the tangible thing that they want, not the esoteric. He was trying to get you out of that place that I think a lot of actors, especially a lot of young actors, fall into, where they are watching themselves perform. And he was saying, that's ego. Put that aside.
Gotcha.
You are in the circumstance now. What do you want, and how are you getting it? And he changed my life. He changed my life. And when I teach now, I try to teach like him. He's the best. He was the best of us.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I'm also sick that you are also teaching there now. That rocks.
I'm very honored. Very honored.
Is there any shift kind of in the education program that you have seen from when you were there to what you are now teaching? And is there any choices you're actively trying to make to change?
Yes.
Go for it.
Yes. Great. It's a great question. Number one, there's more people who look like me.
Heard.
There were not I was one of very few kids who was of color.
Mm-hmm.
Right, in my graduating class, I could count them on my hand, and so there's a lot more kids who look like me, and that is wonderful to see.
Of course,
cost is always an issue at
Yeah.
NYU. I know they are working on that, continuing to work on that, and that's a thing that needs to be tackled because it's the fees are horrendous, and they know that they are charging, and there are so many scholarships that kids can apply for and get, and grants and stuff like that. The other thing that I'd say that has shifted, and this is interesting because I'm actually about to teach a lesson on this on next Monday, right? I think that there is and it's such a hard conversation. When I went to NYU, there was no boundaries. There was no such thing as I kind of being like I won't or I shouldn't or if this was and I want to be clear, this was destructive in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
A teacher would assign to students a nude scene, right, or a sexual scene, and there'd be no talking to these two 18 to 22-year-olds.
Yeah.
How to safely rehearse it.
Of course.
There'd be no talking through, well, you don't have to get naked if you don't want to. In fact, oftentimes it was like, well, that's what the scene calls for, so figure it out.
Yeah.
And that is a horrible thing.
For sure.
To put on students. That is a horrible thing. So I'm so glad that has changed. That said, what I'm also trying to make sure that we don't lose in our effort to know ourselves, know our boundaries, is still investigating the work.
Yeah.
Right? How do we both protect ourselves from the things we know are wrong and still come into a peace given to us with curiosity, with humility, with an investigative spirit? Because I think that what we can lose when it's just a gut reaction of, oh, well, I just don't do that.
Yeah.
Is, well, you haven't even tried. You haven't even looked into the thing. And especially if a safe space has been created. And I want to be clear, I'm not saying students need to get naked and seen. I don't think they do. But I think that we don't have, I can say this honestly, this career, you are going to disagree with most of the rooms you work in. Especially as a marginalized person. You will walk into rooms where people are doing and saying things and asking you to do and say things that you don't agree with, that feel wrong and weird. We have to be able to know how to navigate those spaces without leaving those spaces. We have to. It's not because we owe them anything, but just because the artistic collaborative process doesn't happen unless we stay in the room.
Yeah.
So my question to my students often is, great. So there's something in the text that offends you. There's something in the text that you don't want to say. How would you have this conversation with creative behind the table?
Yeah.
Right. And not to say there's a right answer.
Totally.
But at least thinking about how would you engage with it at all.
Yeah.
Right. Because to me, anything that's in the extreme, I have Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn up on my shelf. Both of these books have been banned in so many states. But they're amazing books.
Yeah.
Right. They have some language that and some that we don't necessarily have context for today, but to just throw them out is insane.
Yeah.
They bring so much more than they take. So how do we navigate that? And again, I say that not knowing the answer and knowing that it's individual for every person.
For sure.
If you haven't at least thought about how to engage with the stuff that is not immediately amenable to you.
Yes.
I think you're doing yourself a disservice.
Heard.
So that's me.
No, it really is like that for sure. And like, I went to UMass. I studied theater at UMass, and like, that was like very much a program that was like really trying to be like, we embrace everything that's new. Like, we're going to explore everything, except if you're not comfortable with something, we're going to immediately give you a new scene. You know, it's like, it's very much like progressive for the sake of saying that we're progressive and not actually just being that way, you know? So it's definitely something that is very murky, especially like with the industry right now, when you are absolutely told that you have to just do whatever to get ahead and to make it, you know? So that's so important for sure. do you feel like you were kind of given a perception of what the industry was in college and like how you had to fit in it post graduation?
Oh yeah, and it would be a perception that I would bump up against every day of my life, right? Because I was coming to you as, and by you I mean the industry, as a tall black man with a good acting background who can sing. The shows that, in terms of Broadway stuff at the time, the shows that were out there for me was nothing that, right? Like people, there's this. Okay, this is all. I'm gonna
go for
it. What I'm about to say with another example. Many years after I graduated, I joined the cast of Ain't Too Proud, which was one of my. I freaking love that show, and I love that cast. I love that company. Edgar, who was Sergio Trujillo's associate on that, backing this all the way up. Des McAnuff, who's the director, was my college best friend's godfather. I knew him since then. He had called me up about, this was my third project with him. He'd called me up to replace Derek Baskin. I replaced Derek Baskin. And I told Des coming into Ain't Too Proud, Des, I can't dance.
Yeah.
Like, I can't dance. And this is a very dance-heavy piece, especially for the five guys playing the Temptations. So Sergio sent his associate Edgar out to the Hamilton tour that I was on at the time to train me in how to dance. And the thing that I appreciated about Edgar was that Edgar understood that not only was I learning how to dance, but I was learning how to dance 60s black soul.
Yeah.
Which in itself is a very specific physical vernacular, right? It's not, and I think that all this to say, when I graduated, there was a strong assumption that if you looked a certain way, that you had access to all the things that, commercial theater tells you are blackness. My mom was a preacher. I never sang gospel once in my life.
Heard.
Right? Even to some extent, the Cole House Walkers of the musical theater canon are not me.
Yeah.
Right? Like the first time I saw myself on stage, in musical theater at least, was Passing Strange.
Gotcha.
That was the show that was like, oh, there I am. I get that.
For sure.
Right? Like the just that feeling of being of but not in, feeling on the fringes of something. So when I graduated, there was an assumption, I think my agents at the time sent me out for everything that was in that pocket, and I never booked a one of them.
Gotcha.
Didn't book a Porgy and Bess. Didn't book Ain't Misbehavin', didn't book, because that just wasn't, I not that I couldn't act it, but at the time I was too young and too green in my mind to be able to go and say, okay, this is a language like any other, and I just have to take the time to learn that language.
Gotcha.
But also, it's also on capitalism and commerce to be like, yeah, those things aren't immediately accessible to him.
Totally.
Even Hamilton was what seemed like a stretch to me, because it was hip hop, and I grew up listening to Green Day, and that was what I did. But then I had a friend who reminded me that it was just heightened verse, and I knew Shakespeare, so that was like a big kind of win. That was like, I can, okay, this I can do. I can do this. So all this to say, I think I walked out into a industry that was extremely narrow.
Gotcha.
About who and what I am. What I've loved now as I've, now been officially 15 years out in this thing, is now it feels like I've built enough of a name for myself where people know what they're getting when they hire me.
Gotcha.
Right?
Okay.
And that feels very affirming to be like,
Yeah.
Okay, so you are getting a black body, but here are the things that Nik brings, that specifically Nik brings.
Of course.
And those things, so no, I'm not really called in for the quote unquote black shows anymore.
Gotcha.
Which I'm honestly okay with that. Not even like Ain't Too Proud was a very specific, you needed somebody who could learn, right, that vernacular of movement and also that sound. But really what you needed an actor like Derek who could stand up and give essentially a 2.5 hour monologue.
Heard.
That's what you needed for my role in Ain't Too Proud. And so that I can do.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. But the rest of it I had to learn. And so I think that I've really been thankful the more that the industry has realized that sometimes people need time.
Yeah. Heard.
Sometimes things aren't just immediately accessible to people. So yeah,
for sure. Once you kind of started working and got the ball rolling under your feet, did you find yourself getting typecasted in any way? Like, was there a certain kind of role that you found yourself falling into? Or on the other hand, is there something that you do better than anyone else that you could kind of weaponize?
I won't say better.
Heard.
But I will say I know what I do bring. It's how do I describe this? Leading man with a quirk or an edge.
Heard.
Right? So I'm never like it's Spamalot was a perfect thing for me.
Yeah.
Aaron Burr was a perfect thing for me.
Mhm.
Right? There's a couple projects that I have coming up that are right in my pocket.
Yeah.
That I can't say yet. But
Of course.
those things where it's like, yeah, I'm not, if you want, kind of bright and shiny, country mouse comes to the big city.
Heard.
You're not hiring me.
Yeah.
You're not.
Of course.
If you want a little lemon in your tea, if you want a little, just a little bit of spice, a little bit of difference. I play villains. I love playing funny villains. I love and I've found myself in that. Very pompous people with big egos, or people with very self-aggrandized, like huge images of themselves. So yeah, I think that's what I've done. I think what I will say is that, it's not that I try to do this. I don't actively try to do this, but I think my favorite actors to watch are the ones who I don't know what they're going to do next.
Heard. Yeah.
I actually, especially in musical theater, because I think musical theater, because of its history, right, in vaudeville, it kind of prides itself oftentimes on being the thing that exactly what you're gonna get.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean it's bad. It just means like you can, like, if you were to look at the musicals that are on Broadway doing well right now, a lot of them, they are exactly what you'd expect them to be.
Yeah.
And not in a bad way, not in a productive way, just like they are. Like Death Becomes Her is camp and is two amazing women screaming their heads off at each other and being funny as hell.
Totally.
And that is on the poster, and that is in everything about it, right? Like that's what it is.
That's why folks are going,
That's why folks are going,
Absolutely.
right? And like and there is something like I have in my writing life, my producer said to me this amazing thing that I think is brilliant. He talked about, I don't need your script to be commercial. I just need to be bulletproof. I need somebody to be able to pick it up 30 years from now and know exactly what you intended with this.
Gotcha.
So I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but my favorite experiences in the theater are surprise.
Gotcha.
I love when I'm like, where is this coming?
Yeah.
What is this?
Yeah.
Like that, and I'll tell you, it's so funny. We're talking, one of my biggest moments of surprise was seeing the original Harry Potter, the full day, like the 8-hour experience or whatever it was, right? Because it was such a, like, you go in and you knew you were going to see Harry Potter, you knew you were going to see magic, and you're going to see, it's going to feel like Gothic academia, but what the question was how are they going to do it?
Yeah,
how are they going to pull this off? And when you didn't know. And when you got to the end of that first show and the Dementors, sorry to ruin this, well, it's a different show now, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But the Dementors flew right above you. It was just like, oh, like it was, it hit something in you that just makes you're in it. I guess this is the better way of saying what I'm trying to say. I hate anything that separates an audience from the story.
Gotcha.
I want you to feel like you're right there.
For sure.
I want you to feel in it. And whether it's a comedy, a tragedy, I don't care. I just want you to feel like you're in it. You're empathizing with these people. I don't want there to be any barrier. I don't want there to be anything where you can just sit back and be like, oh, I'm just entertained. Like even a comedy. Yeah. I want you to be, if it's a comedy, then we're going hard.
For sure. Sure.
I want laughs every freaking second.
Of course.
You know what I mean? Like, so, I love that, and I think that's something that I aspire to bring.
Gotcha.
Is a sense of you don't know what my characters are going to do next.
Yeah. Do you feel like you're seeing a shift kind of towards more of that kind of like community aspect in shows that are starting to get popular and being brought to Broadway and all that stuff? Like, do you feel like kind of the interaction is starting to be more prevalent?
I think artists are getting smarter.
Gotcha.
I think that, right, because at the end of the day, a producer's job is to sell a thing, right? So I think this is the difference, going from school into the industry. There's a point at which you have to accept that the entertainment industry is just a big casino.
Yeah.
It's a bunch of people gambling on things.
Totally.
That's it, right there. They are literally looking at, shows, TV shows, movies, and they're taking their money and they're putting it on the table and saying, I'm going to bet that that's going to do something.
Yeah.
Right? That might not be as the maker of the chip that they're betting on.
Gotcha.
You probably had some craft in there. You probably had a dream in there. You probably had something real that you wanted to say and explore in there. That's not what the industry is doing. The industry is saying, but the artists who I think endure are the artists who take that box of, I know we're playing at a casino, and yet I'm going to find some way to do something cool in that casino.
For sure.
Right?
For sure.
So like, you ask if I see a shift. I see the artists getting smarter. I see the art, like maybe Happy Ending is the perfect example, right? Of a show that says, we're going to give you a super simple, like the simplest story. It is two robots in love. That's it.
Yeah.
It's right. 5 words. And yet within that, you're getting one of the most technologically advanced shows we've ever seen. One of the most well-designed, one of the, I mean, just, this amazing cast, this amazing Asian story without being overtly like this is about Asians in America or it's about Asian, like it's just, no, this is a story that like simultaneously could not be told without the Asian community and yet is not about them being Asian. Is that perfect balance,
of course,
right? Like which, so it is doing extraordinarily subversive things in an extraordinarily simple package.
Gotcha.
And Death Becomes Her same way, right? Like there's so much commentary on, on beauty standards, on aging, on all these things, right? Hidden into a very camp, big budget show, right? Like, so you can, I think the artists, as capitalism gets stronger, artists get smarter.
Gotcha.
And that's what I've loved watching is art is still going to art.
Art is still gonna art.
It's still gonna art.
Yeah.
And you really can't. We've been doing it since the dawn of time. Like, you can't stop it. So, I think that people just have to get a little sneakier. And I love watching people get sneakier. It's really cool.
Yeah, no. I totally agree. I think especially I feel like a lot of actors are starting to take things into their own hands really in ways that are palatable for producers. And like you said, just getting smarter, which kind of just benefits everyone in that regard. And I mean, we're also dealing with like the old guard versus new guard of like production and producers and that side of things. But it feels like we're kind of just like sneaking in right now, and then we're going to be in there without them even really knowing by the time that it shifts anyways. But yeah, no, I totally feel that. At what point did you make your Broadway debut? How'd you kind of find yourself there?
It's 2013. It was Motown the Musical.
Nice.
Again, it was a show that I had to be trained how to do. I really had to be trained. But it was, what I loved about Motown was it was that show was so wild for so many reasons. But everyone in that building took care of each other in a way where they're still my friend. And, half of us from that show ended up in Hamilton 3 years later. But it was such a special experience. And I remember specifically my first day on stage, Donald Weber, Nick Chris lifted me up on their shoulders at my back. I came in as a vacation swing, but they knew that it was such a special thing. And it was like, oh man, I can be a part of this thing. Like, it was just so, again, so many good things came out of there that I would never, hamper on the things that might have been a little more difficult about it. It was such a special experience. Yeah.
Was Broadway always the dream, or like?
No, Broadway was never. I think that's what's so funny. It was never about Broadway. It was, what it was about was, I want to work consistently off a good name.
Heard.
That's what I wanted. That's what I still, and I'm very proud to be able to do that now. Like, I want people to know what it means to hire me. Yeah. And not be afraid to do so.
For sure.
And that goes across many mediums. And so I'm very, Broadway being kind of the bulk of my work is such a welcome surprise.
Totally. Yeah.
But it was never the goal, never the dream. I often feel kind of like the kid who snuck in the back door, because I'm like, yeah, all right, like, I'll show up.
Here I am.
I'll do it.
Yeah.
Here I am.
Yeah.
Doing little stuff. Yeah.
That rocks. Is there some kind of like project or medium now that is like kind of taking a little dream space for you right now? Is there something that you're really itching to do?
Oh, itching to do. So I will say, there's a role that I can't say for sure if I'm going back to do this role or not, but there's a role that I did this past fall that had no right to be as fun as it was.
Amazing.
And there's a production of it that was recently announced, and I cannot say if I'm doing it or not. But what I will say is that Bull Durham is based off the movies going to the Paper Mill in the fall. It was just announced this past week, and it's the closest I'll ever come on stage to playing Han Solo. Like it's just I just get to play just a cocky asshole, and I don't know why that is so fun for me.
Yeah,
but it is so fun for me.
That rocks.
I had the best time at Carmen Cusack, who I starred alongside. She is the absolute dream.
Mm-hmm.
So that's I love that. I'm also a lot of my dreams have to do with my writing.
Gotcha.
Like I said, I have my script over with Hunter Arnold, who's the producer of Maybe Happy Ending.
Mm-hmm.
My show Whiskeyland is in development over there, and then me and Alex Brightman over at Warner Brothers working on our cartoon. So really, I think a lot of my dreams come to these things that are just like my stories. Like I'm at a place where I'm like, yeah, I just want to tell my stories. I want to kind of getting a little averse to just, slotting into other people's. I really want to tell this. Like, doesn't mean that I have to always write it, but it just has to be something that I'm like super into. I just want more. I'm very hungry for those, and so I'm very thankful that I get to have those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are you doing over at Warner Brothers, if you're allowed to say?
Of course, yeah. So me and Alex got a development deal there back in 2022, and it was so funny because it was such a crazy thing because we had been pitching to them since Dead in the pandemic, Dead the shutdown. Me and him had been doing kind of Zoom happy hours, where we would just send each other scripts and talk about them. And then Mark Kaufman, who was the head of WB Theatrical, got us set up over at Pitches with Warner Brothers Studios. Mm-hmm. And we originally pitched kids animation.
Gotcha.
And then very quickly they were like, we think you guys belong in adult animation. So they sent us over to adult animation, and we sold them a cartoon called Cleaners.
Nice.
And we have been developing it for a long time. We just signed our showrunner. We just got our lead animator, and it's very special. It's very special to us to kind of see how a cartoon comes to be. Me and him, neither of us have ever built a cartoon. Before, so it's very exciting to see.
Especially adult cartoons now too, you don't see a lot of new ones of those being made, which is
well, and it's interesting. If you do, they are all on. I grew up watching Adult Swim, and so I always think of like that paradigm.
Mm-hmm.
So it's fun to kind of, as somebody who grew up on Adult Swim, it's fun to now have something that, while it won't air on there, it's, certainly could fit in that place. Like it's just nice. I don't know. I it's a full circle moment. I'm like, ooh, this is cool.
For sure. Do you feel, now that you're at Warner Brothers, do you feel like you're closer to dipping your toes into the DC universe over there? You trying to weasel your way in?
My boss, Shailene, is very aware that I would, at the drop of a hat, go and write for any one of DC's amazing shows, especially now in the James Gunn era.
Yeah.
I would kill to do that. I also, but again, like I think I'm like, let's get this baby off the ground first, and then let's see what else is available. But like I would kill. I would kill to be there.
What would be your dream character to write for?
Batman.
Okay,
Batman.
Great. Amazing. Who would you choose as a villain in your first story that you would ever write?
This is good. No, it's a great question.
Are you going classic? Are you bringing someone new to light? What's going on?
I would love to take a look at the Jason Todd tragedy.
Yeah.
I would love to take a look at that. Just because I think there's so much there. They explored it. The last time I saw somebody do it, like a good job of it, was Arkham Knight, the video game.
Yeah.
But there's just so much there about fathers and sons, and about I think Bruce as a man who's haunted by his past. I think his parents dying is one thing. But for those of you who don't know, the Jason Todd saga is one of his Robins. He has several Robins, and one of his Robins comes to a horrible incident at the hands of the Joker, and in many versions of the lore, it comes back to bite Bruce. I just think there's so much there. I think there's so much that you can explore about how a person deals with the mistakes of their past.
For sure.
Yeah.
That rocks. Amazing.
Yeah.
In that same vein, is there, or I guess I'll expand it to nerddom in general, is there some genre of nerddom that you would like to come to the stage? Or I will also offer, is there one that you would like to come to the stage that you think would transfer seamlessly? Or is there one that you would like to come here anyways, and then you kind of figure it out how the hell we would do it?
I think that there's so many stories that should be that we should explore on stage. I think I'm very excited to see how Stranger Things does. I'm gonna be there opening night, right? And that I think that will be very telling.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm someone who never says no to anything, right?
Gotcha.
Like you can try for a superhero on stage. You can try. I think you really, if you do it in a way that's true to them, but makes it, the question is, why does this need to be on stage?
Yeah.
What about it is theatrical? And I think that if you answer that question for yourself, you can do anything. As a nerd, though, I would say the biggest thing that I would want to see on stage, and this is hard for me, because it's quite frankly the author has proven themselves to not be such a smart or kind human. But American Gods, Neil Gaiman. I would love if you know that story. I'm obsessed with that story. I'm always in love with cool ways of looking at America, and I think one of the great ways that we are able to look at the American conundrum is through genre.
Yeah.
And Neil Gaiman did this amazing job looking at it through faith and through lore and folklore and mythology, and I just think American Gods on stage would be kind of powerful. The first season, Brian Fuller, who did Pushing Daisies, and Hannibal did a season of it for Stars pre-pandemic, and the first season was so special, and I would love to see a stage version of that.
Yeah.
Gods.
Love. We need more nerdy theater, I feel like. That is a niche that has not been nearly delved into enough, and like that's one where I'm like, yeah, there's a show here or there, but I can't say that there's a major movement for this yet. But
no,
let nerds do theater.
Let nerds do that. And here's what I think is interesting about that, because again, this is where the capitalism. This is where I talk about artists having to be smart. Capitalism does not want niche right now. Capitalism wants mass appeal.
Yeah.
Right. Like, so they're gonna go for these things, but like there are nerd things that are mass appeal.
For sure.
And if you do them smart, then you won't betray what they are.
Yeah.
Right? Like, if you can really figure out how to serve the piece on stage, and it might mean that, like, maybe, like, I've always thought about, I'm looking at Arkham Asylum right now, the graphic novel by Grant Morrison, and I've always thought about how it's, at the end of the day, it's just a hard-boiled detective story, right?
Yeah.
And he's going through this asylum, and really, it actually really lends itself to almost like a stage storytelling style, because it is just rooms in an asylum.
Yeah.
Like, he's just going from room to room. And if you could figure out a way to do that didn't betray the source material, I think you could have something really special. I don't know. If somebody tells me it can't be done, and I say, watch me.
Oh, it absolutely can.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like also there are a lot of like subgroups in pop culture where like I feel like it would just be a cash cow. So I'm like,
Absolutely.
I'm like, why aren't we trying to do this? Like, producers, hello, like, let's get it out there. And like, I mean, we do have things like Harry Potter, and like 20-Sided Tavern off Broadway that are like cornering their markets and like being smart about that. But yeah, I think Stranger Things will be very telling as to kind of how that would move forward and stuff,
Yes, very much so.
But regardless, we need it. We got to make it happen.
I agree.
We really do.
Hey, you heard it here first. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's starting from this podcast.
Oh my God. Imagine. Okay. Well, Batman the Musical. Here we go. Arkham Asylum.
Here we go.
Oh my God,
baby.
I'm writing that down, and we're patenting it right now. Nobody can take this idea. This is verbal. It's ours.
So excited.
Rock and roll. Nik, do you have any other words of wisdom that you want to share with the people? Do you have any advice for the young Niks out there?
Oh,
trying to navigate this wacky world of theater that we got here.
Be kind. I know that's so cliche, but be kind to each other. You can never listen too deeply.
For sure.
You can never listen too deeply, and choosing what you want to listen to. But when you listen, when you do choose to give your attention to something, give it with your whole heart.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that it's not about you.
Yeah.
The story is not just about you. There's so many more people out there and stories out there. And I'll tell you, one of my acting teachers used to ask me 4 questions every day. He say, give me one thing you saw, one thing you learned, one thing you feel, and one thing you're grateful for.
Wow. I love that.
And those are great questions to ask yourself every day.
Yeah. And we need that right now. You know, the hustle and bustle is too real. Audition season's kicking everyone's butts, and, you know, we need a second to just stop. I love that. Yes. I really do.
Always
Rock and
do.
roll. There you go, folks. Make sure you're asking yourself those questions, and get out there and book and do all those things, because we are rooting for you. We are
Always.
your biggest supporters, and you can be our biggest supporters by finding us on Patreon. Yes,
Nice.
folks, that is Patreon. Thank you so much. Thank you. We crafted that very well. Folks, that is patreon.com/beatoBroadway. Just a reminder that we are not gatekeeping any vital information on there. That is just for fun, silly bonus content with all of the fools that I bring onto the show. And yeah, so come find us over there. We'd love to meet you over there. As always, folks, you can find us on most social media platforms at BA2Broadway. Nick, where can folks find you if you want to be found?
At Nikki Walks on Instagram and Threads. That is NIKKYWALKS.
Love. Thank you so much for being here. This was lovely.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Anytime. You are welcome back here anytime.
Thank you.
Rock and roll. Okay, folks. Until next time. Bye. From BA to Broadway is created, produced, and edited by Brennan Stefanik, music by Dylan Kaufman, and cover art by Jordan Vongsithi.